I had mentioned in a previous video about for instance, if you took someone from 1500 BC and transported them across time to 1500 AD, that they could probably adjust and get along pretty well. But if you took someone from 1500 AD and transported them to this time, they would be totally lost. As a matter of fact, they would think they were in another planet, or they just wouldn't know what to make of it because of we have gained so much knowledge and the world has changed so much since then. And it was also brought to my attention that a lot of that knowledge, a huge amount of it, has been just since 1950. But in my lifetime, I can recall as a boy listening to radio programs, which were a big deal. They were like TV programs. And then we got a television, and that moved on. And through the 50s into the 60s, television was pretty dominant, and you had the mainframe computers and all of that. And then the PCs came about, and I was working then when you had the desktop PC come into effect. And so what has happened, and it is amazing, is all of that knowledge and the ability to get to all of that knowledge quickly with your phone is amazing. Again, when I was a boy, I had to do, I think I was in the 8th grade, and our teacher required us to do a paper on mathematics. And I remember we had a set of encyclopedias in the house, and a lot of houses did back then. That was our computer trove of information. But I remember going to the library and compiling, as it turned out, a pretty good report on the history of mathematics and how it came about and how we came to use Arabic numerals and so forth. But the point is now, using this instrument that I'm looking at right now, or using my telephone, I could get the same information. And it appears to me, people are going a little nuts. And I think part of that is we're suffering from information overload. We have so much knowledge that we're suffering a nervous breakdown. and that I think equates to what you're seeing going on around you today. I mean, Western civilization has been so good for the world. It has done so many good things. Yes, it's done some bad things, but every civilization has. And now it appears that our universities have lost the ability to cope with handling that information and that knowledge, and people are actually being encouraged to withdraw and go to what they call a safe space, or nobody, the people are afraid of being offended, or and no one wants to reach out for that next step. In 1969, when we landed on the moon, I lived in Houston, Texas, and that was it was a big deal all over the world. But the thing is if you look at what they used, and we haven't done it since, what they used back then is tremendously antiquated by what we have now. But people are really kind of, yes, it's mostly private. We're having people go into space and whatnot, but we just kind of pulled back from that massive reaching out for information, for growing, and I think it scared us to death. We reached a certain point. We have this unbelievable level of prosperity, and people are talking about how poor they are, and they actually work to be that way. I mean, you have people wandering the streets who want to be that way. I remember when I was younger, and I worked in a city, and we would reach a freeze, and the police would actually have to go out and make homeless people go into shelters so they wouldn't freeze to death. and the homeless thing has grown exponentially since then. And I think a lot of that is people are just afraid and they don't know how to handle it. And our so-called gatekeepers of information and the people who are supposed to be training us on how to use all this information are scared to death. They don't know what to do themselves. So we have a civilization that's reached unbelievable heights, and everybody's afraid of the height. They're afraid to look down. They don't know what to do, and they're afraid to go any higher because they're afraid they'll fall. You know, so, and believe it or not, we're going to fall if we keep doing this, because there's only two things. You can't stay hanging on the precipice, and that's where we are. It's a precipice. You either have to keep climbing or you're going to go down. And it happens. I was just watching a documentary the other night on civilizations that disappeared for a time because we just lost track of them. And the Hittites, which are mentioned in the Bible, and the Assyrians, and I'm not going to go through the list, but they just were gone. And now archaeologists in this century and the last century have been finding out more and more and more about people who were around, who were very advanced, and they were gone. So we have a lot of people now who are wasting what they've inherited because many of them probably think they don't have to do anything. They can just spend the inheritance and it'll stay there forever. Well, it won't. And you need to be aware of that. I'm a positive person, or try to be, but you have to keep growing. If you don't grow, you wither. You just do. And so, yes, we've acquired a massive amount of knowledge. We need to access it, use it, and grow with it. Not run and hide and pretend we're victims or we can't do anything because something happened to us in the past or whatever. Or be guilty because somebody that looks like you did something bad in the past. Well, here's something for you to think about. Everybody that looks like somebody else, they've descended from people who did something bad. We all are. Everybody is. So you just have to get over that, you know. Plus, a lot of those people that did so-called bad things did things that have enabled us to get to where we are now. If you disinherit, or not disinherit, but if you do away with everybody that taught us things because they did something bad, then we're going to be back to the caveman level, because growth and requires risk. And risk sometimes requires running over somebody that doesn't want to grow. And that's what's going to happen. If we don't keep growing, somebody else is going to step up and take over the growth pattern. Or tear it all down and we'll have to start all over again, which has happened several times. But think about that. The nervous breakdown can be, you can get over a nervous breakdown. You just can. And a lot of that's just mental. It's mental. But a lot of that's, people just bring it on themselves because they just don't want to face a situation and they're afraid of what might happen if they do certain things. You all have a good day.